As we approach the 1 year anniversary of Starfield, it's time to tackle the burning question. Has it finally pulled itself out of the black hole, or are we just chasing space crap? Now let's be honest, Starfield had more bumps than a camel with hemorrhoids, but was it really that bad, or did it just get caught in the crossfire of its own overhyped bollocks? You see, when a game gets as much attention as Starfield did, it almost becomes a national pastime to take a shit on it, especially when it doesn't roll out with perfect 10s across the board. But is Starfield really a lost cause here, or are we just too fatigued to believe in another comeback story a la Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky? Well, put the kettle on, grab a cuppa, and let's have a mass debate on whether Starfield has turned a corner. Now, I gave Starfield a solid 8 out of 10. Yeah, I know, I'm probably one of the few mad lads out there who actually had a blast with it. I thought the shooting mechanics were tighter than a nun's knickers, the character and shipbuilding well thought out, and the missions, both main and side, I thought were pretty entertaining for the most part. So when I saw some creators tossing out 3 out of 10 scores, I couldn't help but think, are you lot serious, or just jumping on the hate bandwagon for a few extra likes? But hey, I'm not going to do a Stevie Wonder here and turn a blind eye to the game's many other issues. So let's take off the rose tinted specs here and have a good look at what went tits up and see where Starfield stands as it approaches its first birthday. One of the most obvious fixes, which let's be honest, I think we all saw it coming, were the optimizations and graphic tweaks. It had Rain Man stutters, looked pig ugly in most parts, and was missing some basic features on PC like an FOV slider and HDR calibration. From memory, they didn't even launch with DLSS, and some modder beat them to it. However, I'm pleased to say that many of those issues are now sorted, and booting up Starfield a year later, I'm happy to report things run nice and smooth, look great, and whisper it people, at times it even looks incredibly lush and wonderful. However, it's still not perfect. For the life of me, the HDR implementation is still wank, with this washed out filter that has what I call alcoholic face, a sort of grey gaunt looking thing that is depressing. I called it out in my original review and it still stands. It's bloody awful. It feels like you're constantly playing on an IPS model where blacks look washed out, which is even more frustrating if you are playing on OLED. But this brings me to the next big pull of Starfield's 1 year anniversary, and that is the growth of the modding scene. Many mods can now be found on the startup menu under the creation section, and for a lot of people this is controversial as some of these mods are paid for, but many are of course still free. I for one found this quite frankly amazing mod, which I'm going to link in the description and give credit to the modder, and it's a simple fix which, for you guessed it, is to remove that washed out shitty filter. And honestly lads, it's been transformative and totally changed the way I view the game. Space now genuinely feels like space, where dark inky blacks cover the sky, which has added to the impact of amplifying the lit areas, giving HDR that extra punch. And whilst you find all sorts of handy mods in there, like improving the companions' behaviour so they aren't toddlers lost at Disney, or even downloading a little watch for your wrist, because why the not, the reality is some of the best mods are only just getting started, since Bethesda only recently released the script extender, a tool that is going to open up a Pandora's box of goodness that will have Todd Howard creaming his pants. And we will come back to mods later as well, as there is a possibility of fixing one of Starfield's greatest issues of all. Another aspect many players complained about was the total lack of survival or challenge on these planets. With 1,000 to explore, everything felt a bit lifeless. I don't just mean the fauna or critters roaming around, but the gameplay itself. Well, the survival update changed everything here, giving you huge flexibility in your playstyle. Everything from hunger, thirst and rest could be implemented now, with a tougher playthrough offering more XP, while an easier one was reducing it. And for many starting a new game fresh, this is honestly the best way to play it. It adds that extra bit of oomph and that extra bit of purpose to searching rooms and scavenging items. And just like a market seller in Wuhan, you can finally eat food directly off a dirty floor or table without concerning the world, ready to create the next big disease. Lovely stuff it is. One huge miss in the original release was the total lack of map features, where it felt like you carried around one of those shitty maps for a theme park where nothing was to scale, and going from point A to point B was a pain in the royal arse. Again, Bethesda listened to feedback and finally gave us detailed surface maps for those big towns and cities, and honestly it should have been there from day one, but we'll take it regardless. What surprised me most was that the new maps started to show things I'd missed in my first playthrough. For example, revealing just how much bigger and more detailed the cities were. I'm not saying they were perfect, but Christ on a stick, it's like going from Amy Schumer to Margot Robbie. Now, ships were one of the game's standout features, especially with how modular they were in terms of building what you wanted to and how you wanted to. They did feel a bit Lego-esque at times, but once again, modders are stepping in with some very nice designs here. Bethesda has really doubled down on making the ship feel like home, giving you complete customization of the interior. So, if you fancy placing a fridge right next to your bed to feed your fat ass, you go do that. It's not perfect, sure, but if you're into that sort of thing, it really can make you feel like you've got a home away from home. Then we got some new quests, mainly in the form of a whole new faction, the Tracker Alliance. Now, I don't know what it is about Bethesda games, whether it's Skyrim, Fallout, or indeed Starfield, but I've always found the faction quests more enjoyable than the main quest, where the side dish of garlic bread dominates over everything else. So, a new faction is hugely appreciated. Here you get to be a bounty hunter and take down some riffraff, and there's even a paid piece of DLC in the creation section. That's pissed people off because it feels like it's guiding you to ham up some of your money, but my understanding is that it's only for the scripted, more involved missions. You can still go to the terminals and track down random procedurally generated scum. Not a game changer, I admit, but hey, it's more content added since release. And finally, we got the big one with the release of vehicles, allowing you to traverse planets in style. And of course, again, modders, they're already on it, having a blast, turning them into Star Wars style speedsters. Now, before release, there was speculation we might see vehicles, but Reddit experts laughed, claiming there was no way the game engine could handle such a thing. But alas, here we are. Don't you just love keyboard warriors? And I have to say, the vehicles have been implemented really quite well here. All in all, the support Starfield has seen since release has to be applauded. For those of you who never touched Starfield or turned off early, there have been enough changes here to warrant starting fresh and having a bloody good time with it. However, there are some glaring issues that just haven't been fixed, and for the most part, they revolve around exploration. One of the issues that remain is the rinse and repeat nature of outposts or events. They get boring real fast, real quick, and freshening these up, maybe with more unique style enemies and challenges, could give the randomness that Starfield seeks a much needed boost. Right now, though, you sort of stumble across them as if a homeless person is begging you for money. You know you should check it out and help those in need, but you sort of walk on past, head down, hoping that they just leave you alone. Another part that needs a massive kick in the knackers is the loot system, which to me is still an absolute mess. Yes, there's a mod to help with it, but for those of you who can't be asked to mess about with all that, you're left with the vanilla version, and frankly, it's a load of old crap. On top of that, there's so much to collect that it becomes overwhelming, which is exactly how I feel about the guns. I reckon even our adorable American cousins across the pond would be shocked at the sheer number of guns that were on offer here, that even Walmart would start shutting this down. They're literally everywhere, and from there it's tough to decipher the cream from the crap, mainly down to how simplified the data and information that each gun is laid out to you. It's utter drivel. And finally, one of the biggest criticisms thrown at Starfield that still persists today is the immersion breaking loading screens. I genuinely think as design choices go, they royally this up. Atmospheric re-entry, non-existent. Loading screens galore between jumps, absolutely everywhere. And generally the spaceflight parts feel like an afterthought for a game set in, well, space. In our Star Wars Outlaws review, we called out how brilliantly the loading screens were used to enhance that immersion. And even if Starfield had to use that as a stopgap, it would have made a difference. Somehow though, a modder by the name that escapes me right now, but I will link it in the description, has already started to tackle this very issue. Now, it's very early days and a bit clunky of course, but he's developed a system that introduces a fast travel style mechanic done in real time, where you can actually go from planet to planet and move about your ship. Now, who knows where this leads, but the proof is in the pudding, Mr. Todd Howard, that us gamers wanted something like this. We knew Starfield was never going to reach Star Citizen or Elite Dangerous levels of simulation, but something more akin to No Man's Sky would have been much appreciated here. The issue with Starfield is you don't really ever feel like an explorer of space venturing into the unknown with danger at every corner, rushing through a new undiscovered planet's atmosphere thinking what the bloody hell you might be facing. Instead, you just suddenly appear, making this execution one of the most damaging aspects of the game. So, to answer the question, has Starfield turned a corner? The answer is no, but there is a strong argument to say that it is turning a corner. The pace of meaningful updates 1 year into its life should be applauded, and with the mods now coming through, especially the more complex and game-changing ones in development, the future of Starfield is brighter than ever. And let's not forget, by the end of this month, there's a hefty DLC dropping in the form of Shattered Space. No matter how that's received, I'm more excited to see what Bethesda are doing afterwards. None of these updates though change my mind on the score we originally gave it. It's still a solid 8/10 in my eyes, because honestly, for all its warts, all its faults and misgivings, there's a cracking game to be had here, with hours of entertainment. And looking back over the games released since, and the lackluster year of 2024, maybe Starfield wasn't as terrible as the bandwagon keyboard warriors would have us all think. Until next time, my lovelies, Reggie out.